Special right triangles. One special type of right triangle is a triangle that has angle measures of 45 degrees, 45 degrees, and 90 degrees. So we call this a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And when you have these specific angle measures, the sides have a special ratio amongst them. So the two legs of the triangle, those are going to be congruent to each other. So if you know the length of one leg, you'll know the length of the other. Then, once you have the length of that leg, in order to find the length of the hypotenuse, all you need to do is take that leg and multiply it times the square root of 2. So you can either remember it this way from the diagram, that the length of the two legs are the same, and we've labeled that with x, and the hypotenuse is the leg times the square root of 2, or you can write it down in these two ways. The leg times the square root of 2 gives you the length of the hypotenuse. So if you were to go from the hypotenuse to the leg, the opposite of multiplying by the square root of 2 would be dividing by the square root of 2. So the hypotenuse divided by the square root of 2 will give you the length of the leg. So let's work out a couple examples using what we've learned about 45, 45, 90 triangles. So first, remember, you always have to double check the angles to make sure that it's 45, 45, and 90. And then that means the two legs, the sides that make the right angle, are going to be the same. So that means that x is also equal to 10. So now we just have to find the length of y. To find y, the hypotenuse, remember, we're going to take the leg and multiply it times the square root of 2. Now in this case we don't have any extra simplifying to do, so y is going to equal 10 times the square root of 2. And that's it. In the second example, again we have our 45, 45, 90 triangle, and this time we're given the length of the hypotenuse. So if we took the leg and multiplied it by the square root of 2 to get the hypotenuse, we need to do the opposite. Take the hypotenuse, and we want to divide by the square root of 2 in order to get the two legs. So 7 root 2 divided by root 2, those are going to cancel out, and we're just left with x equals 7 and y equals 7, since we know that both of the legs are going to be congruent. Next, we want to talk about the 30, 60, 90 triangle. So this is another special type of triangle, and again, the angle measures have to be 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. So we have a 30, 60, 90. And this time, because we have 3 different angle measurements, we also have 3 different side lengths. So in order to differentiate, we're going to label the differences between the two legs. Since this angle is 30 degrees, remember this is the smallest angle, so it's opposite from the shortest side. We're going to call this the short leg. And then, because the 60 degree is the next one, and that's opposite from the other leg, we're going to call this the long leg. And then, as always, opposite from the right angle, this is our hypotenuse. So we're going to use these labels to just discuss and compare the ratio of the side lengths. So everything is based off of the short leg. This is the one that gives you the most information. If you have the short leg, you need to multiply by 2 to get the hypotenuse. And then if you have the short leg, you multiply by the square root of 3 in order to get the long leg. So that is the key. You cannot go directly from the hypotenuse to the long leg or from the long leg to the hypotenuse. You're always going to need to go through the short leg. So if you take the short leg and multiply by 2 to get the hypotenuse, you'll take the hypotenuse and divide by 2 to get the short leg. If you take the short leg and multiply by square root of 3 to get the long leg, you'll take the long leg and divide by square root of 3 to get the short leg. So here are a few formulas written down that you can remember. The short leg multiplied by 2 will give you the length of the hypotenuse, and the hypotenuse divided by 2 will give you the length of the short leg. The short leg times the square root of 3 will give you the long leg, and the long leg divided by the square root of 3 will give you the short leg. So if you just remember these relationships, then you'll be fine. And again, keep in mind that you cannot go directly from the hypotenuse to the long leg. You're always going to need to go through the short leg first. So here, when we work out a few examples, we need to find the value of each variable and write our answers in simplest radical form. So in this first one, we're given this side length of 4, and because this is opposite from the 30-degree angle, we know that this is the short leg. So let's go ahead and label. If 4 is the short leg, this side's the long leg, and here we have the hypotenuse. So remember, the short leg times 2 will give us the hypotenuse. So 4 times 2 is 8, and our hypotenuse is labeled with x. The short leg times the square root of 3 gives us the long leg, and there isn't really anything to simplify here, so 4 root 3 is going to be our long leg, which is labeled with y. In the second example, we are given the length of the side that is opposite from the right angle. That means this is the hypotenuse. The 60-degree, this is opposite from the long leg, which means that this over here is going to be the short leg. So I would highly suggest that you label your sides first before you start your calculations to make sure that you're actually calculating the right thing. So from the hypotenuse, remember, we always want to find the short leg first. So the hypotenuse divided by 2 will give us the short leg. So 12 divided by 2 means that 6 is equal to our x. Then from the short leg, we need to multiply by square root of 3 in order to get the long leg. So again, we can't really simplify this, so 6 root 3 is equal to our y, the long leg. Let's take a look at this last example. So 30 degrees is opposite from the short leg. Here we have the hypotenuse, so this is going to be our long leg. And again, when you have the long leg, you want to find the short leg first. You always want to find the short leg first if you're not given the short leg. So we take the long leg, and in order to find the short leg, we need to divide by the square root of 3. So square root of 3 divided by square root of 3, that cancels, and we're left with 5 is equal to x, the short leg. Now that we have the short leg is equal to 5, we can easily find the hypotenuse, because the short leg times 2 gives us the hypotenuse. So we have 10 equal to y. So these are the basic examples. Before we move on to some more examples with a little bit more complicated algebra, we need to do a little bit of Algebra 1 review. First, we need to remember that the product of two radicals is equal to the radical of the product. So square root of 2 times square root of 2 is the same as the square root of 2 times 2, which is 4. And the square root of 4 is 2. Here, 5 root 3 times root 3 is really equal to 5 times the square root of 3 times 3, which is 9. Now the square root of 9 is equal to 3, so our final simplified answer, 5 times 3, is 15. Another part of our algebra review is talking about rationalizing the denominator. You cannot have radicals in the bottom of the fraction. So in order to rationalize and then simplify, we're going to need to get rid of this. The way that we can get rid of this is to multiply it by the exact same radical. As you see up here, the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 leaves us with an answer of 2. So that's what's happening along the bottom of the fraction. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 will give us 2. And that way we're able to get rid of that radical in the denominator. But when you multiply the bottom of the fraction by a number, you also have to multiply the top of the fraction. So along the top, we have 6 times the square root of 2 over 2. Now our very last step is to make sure that we simplify as much as possible. So when you take a look at this, we have 6 over 2 outside of the radical. So 6 divided by 2 gives us 3. And then we have that square root of 2. So this is our final simplified answer. So let's go ahead and rationalize and simplify this radical. So we have square root of 3 on the bottom, so we want to multiply the bottom and the top by the square root of 3, so that along the bottom we get square root of 3 times square root of 3 equals 3. Along the top, 4 times square root of 3. Now this time when you take a look at the numbers that are outside the radical, 4 over 3, you can't simplify that anymore. So this is going to be your simplified answer. So let's work out a few more examples using one from the 45, 45, 90 triangle and one from the 30, 60, 90 triangle. And this is going to use some of our algebra review. So in the 45, 45, 90, we have our two angles, which means our legs are going to be the same. So we know that x and y will be exactly the same. We're given the hypotenuse as 12. So remember, you have to take the hypotenuse and you need to divide that by the square root of 2 in order to get the leg. So we want to take 12 and divide it by the square root of 2. Now, we can't leave this as our answer, so we need to rationalize and simplify. So we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by square root of 2, just so that we can change what this answer looks like, not change the value. So along the top, we have 12 times the square root of 2. Along the bottom, square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. And again, that last step, look at the numbers outside the radical. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So we have 6 square root of 2 is going to be equal to our x, and it's also equal to our y. Now let's take a look at this one, our 30, 60, 90 triangle. We're given the length of the hypotenuse. So remember, whenever you're given the hypotenuse or the long leg, since this is across from the 60 degree, you always want to find the short leg first. So whether you're given the hypotenuse or long leg, you always find the short leg first. So the hypotenuse, in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the hypotenuse divided by 2 gives you the length of the short leg. So 6 root 3 divided by 2. Now here, we just need to simplify this. 6 divided by 2 is going to give us 3 square root of 3. So this is our short leg, which is our x. So here we have x is equal to 3 root 3. Now, once you take the short leg, you need to multiply it times the square root of 3 in order to get the long leg. So we're going to take the short leg, 3 root 3, and multiply it times the square root of 3 so that we can find the length of the long leg. So you multiply numbers outside the radical together. 3 times 1 is just 3. Numbers inside the radical together, square root of 3 times square root of 3 is square root of 9, which is 3 times square root of 9 is 3. So last step, 3 times 3 is 9. That is going to be the length of our long leg, which is y. So this example with the 45, 45, 90 and 30, 60, 90 use the same rules and relationships that we talked about in the beginning. The only difference is that they require a little bit more algebra work. That's it for this lesson. I'll see you in class for more practice.